I loved the Lilac. It was a real working ship. You really had contact with the ocean and the water. I mean, steam driven. It was the best time of my life, maybe. You know, it was really, I loved the Lilac. We worked buoys, we put aids up. I mean, we did shore aids. We did a lot of work on shore too. We put the small boat over, go to shore, and maybe paint a tower or fix their lights or whatever it took, you know. I loved it. It was a great place. It was almost dangerous work because the Lilac is not a real stable ship. And you'd have these monstrous cement bricks on there that hold the buoys in place and all this buoy chain. That you lived in a little canvas, almost like a canvas bed or whatever you want to call it, that folds up against the wall, and you're in a little tiny area. And everybody was on the same team there. There was no prima donnas. Everybody was pretty much teamwork, you know. So it was a great time in my life. I really enjoyed it.
Tell me about jumping a buoy. And
Okay.
what does that mean first?
We come up to a buoy. The buoys were either 8/28s, which means they're 28 feet tall. Lilac would come up next to it, and we would jump off the buoy deck. And then you would go climb up the buoy, and the Lilac would go away. And then you check the battery, see how much power was in it, check the timer to make sure that it only came on at night, because you'd burn the batteries out, rather than bring the buoy on the ship, because you couldn't work that many buoys. We had a lot of buoys. We had all the way from the Delaware up north of Philadelphia until it got too shallow for us to be there. That was jumping buoys, so you get on it. And there was one time I was on the buoy underneath the Delaware Memorial Bridge where they were just building the second span. And the fire department came racing out to save me because I was on the buoy and the ship was gone, and somebody saw me and they thought my boat sank. So, I made the front page of the Newcastle Times or whatever it was called, a little newspaper. And we worked ranges. A range is a navigational system where they have a big tower and then in front is a small tower. And you line it up. When the towers line up, you're on the range. This was invented by Ben Franklin. I guess you knew that, or maybe you didn't know that. Ben Franklin figured this out. So then that range, and when the next range lined up, you turn and go on that range. So they didn't have buoys so much in those days. They had range markers. And that's how you stayed in the channel of the Delaware. That's the first place where they had ranges. And there was dozens of them to come up the river. And we worked hard. I mean, we would work so hard that you'd be full of the buoy mud and all that crap, and you'd go into your rack, and you'd fold your rack down, you get into your rack, you wouldn't even take your shoes or anything off. You would steam to the next buoy. Then you got a deck horse had to get out again, and you had to pull these buoys that are 38 feet tall out of the water, and it was hard work, with just steam, and but you felt good about yourself. You felt like you were doing something, Well, we used to bring in oil and fresh water to the, now they're Texas towers, but in those days they looked like a lighthouse in a rock. And we would bring them water, because there was no water supply, and we bring them fuel for the generators. And small boats out of Cape May used to bring them food and stuff, but we bring them fuel and water. The boat deck had 2 boats on it. What we used to use them for, we put the small boat over with 3, a coxswain, a fireman, and an 8-hand guy, and a navigational guy. And we'd work the shore aids. We'd paint them, and we would fix the lights, and we'd make sure everything was working. And we would go, we would be away for the whole day. Once they put us over the side, they would go down and work the buoys down the harbor. And I liked being on the small boat because it reminded me of like when I grew up, and I used to clam, and I always had a small boat. I always had a boat here in Long Island, I loved the Coast Guard. I went in when I was, as soon as I graduated from high school, obviously. I was 18 already, but I mean, as soon as I could, I joined the Coast Guard. It's where I wanted to be. My father always talked about it when he was young, He was rescued by the Coast Guard off of Oak Beach here out in Long Island. We had good engineering staff in there, really good steam guys. There's not a lot of steam guys around. Now there's none, but in those days, we were the only direct drive steam vessel, the cutter in the Coast Guard. All the rest they call them steam ships, so they're not. They use steam to generate electricity, and electric motors actually move the ship. That's a steamship today. Back then, the steam actually turned the propeller, which was good and bad. I mean, it had a lot of torque, but it was very hard to stop. It's dangerous, you don't realize, when those cables snap occasionally, or when the chain or you're putting the chain overboard, you can get killed in an instant. I mean, it was really dangerous work. I know today they all wear hard hats and everything. We didn't know what that was. You know, we had hard heads, so we didn't need a hat. You know, so it's dangerous. It's potentially very dangerous. I mean, you got to be awake. You got to be aware. We had a nuclear buoy. It was the only nuclear buoy I think they ever made. It was a small reactor. It was at the Delaware side of the C&D Canal, and we would work it, but we couldn't do anything to it. It had no batteries or anything in it, and that was you can look that up. They decided against it. It was too expensive to make, or whatever the reason. But it was right at the entrance to the C&D Canal on the Delaware side. You know, I know that we were in Gloucester. There was a movie theater there, and some of the guys went into the movie theater, and the townies attacked them. So we went into town and took appropriate action against the townies that did this. We knew who it was. They thought they were tough guys. You know, they weren't so tough when you get a buoy ape trying to beat your head with something. You know what I mean? I mean, they were attacking our guys. They were snipes. They were small guys. They were in a movie theater. Then they attacked, the townies attacked them. And then that was the last time the townies attacked any of the guys from the Lilac, I'll tell you that. It's ridiculous. You know, here we are serving the country. Yeah, we're in New Jersey, but you know what I'm saying. So we went in and we made a impression on the local people, the thugs, the local thugs. But the people in town generally liked us. The people in Newcastle loved us for some reason. I don't know why. They were so happy whenever we came into town, you know. I don't know. And they were even happier when we left, but that's not the point. But